The objective of the School of Law is to provide training in the fundamental principles of law and to women of good moral character who have completed at least 90 semester hours of standard college work at an accredited college or university may apply for admission. Be honest, practice self-discipline, and have elevating objectives in your lives. Engage in an activity that will help make this a better world. Plan, if you can, so that some of the fruits of your life will reach into eternity with an uplifting purpose. It began in September 1947 at the University of Houston with a wooden barracks and a dream. Just a handful of men counted themselves among the first class of pioneers. And from that class, a legacy of excellence was born. It was called simply the University of Houston School of Law. Cooled by small fans in the summer, heated by 2 pot-bellied stoves in the winter, it was less than palatial. Yet from these modest beginnings, the foundations of high achievement were laid. Building a first-class law school from the ground up would be no small task, but one name soon emerged as the right person to get it done. The man was A.A. White, a respected attorney from Dallas. White grew up the son of a farmer and knew early on the value of hard work. He was intrigued with the idea of nurturing a new generation of legal practitioners and in building a law school which would reflect his own high ideals. Dean White determined that while his operating budget might be low, his academic standards wouldn't be. It was an attitude that would prevail throughout White's tenure and every dean that would follow in his footsteps.
A.A. was a person who you respected. The greatest quality he emanated is one of dignity, responsibility, concern for you, and you respected him. He treated everyone with respect, and in return, he gained respect, dignity, a man of great dignity.
And I think in going back and looking at what he accomplished in those early years, it is really a credit to his perseverance and his toughness on himself, on the students, on the faculty, that this school is where it is today.
A.A. White, I learned to love him. Well, he was a very fair gentleman, and from the outset, he knew what his high hopes were for the school, and he always aimed higher, and he instilled that in us, that this school would get better and would always keep improving.
In 1949, a young lawyer named Newell Blakely joined the faculty of the school and upheld A.A.'s vision of providing the finest law school education possible.
Dean Blakely was someone that I targeted early in my career here at the law school. Having heard Blakely's stories from my brother for years, I was determined to get out without taking the Blake. And I managed that until my last semester. And in my last semester in law school, I took the Blake and forever after regretted that I had not taken him my very first year and taken him for everything that I could.
The faculty were sitting on the front row and the students were sitting behind, and President Hoffman, they were conferring English degrees, history degrees, et cetera, that day, and President Hoffman said, would the candidates for the Bachelor of Law degrees please rise? And we rose. And he said, he started talking, by the power invested in me by the Board of Regents. You know, they have a mantra they go through. I hereby confer upon y'all the bachelor's degrees. And while he was saying that, Dean Blakely turned around and he faced us. And he didn't do but one thing. He squared his shoulders back. He was saying, be proud. You've accomplished something. Now, why is that such a powerful image? Because Dean Blakely did not give compliments. He was like this person, like your daddy. You always want your daddy to say, hey, you did a good job. And he was saying to us, you did a good job. And I'll love him forever.
Despite the meager conditions, the students demonstrated an intense seriousness about their education. They sweated through torts in September and froze their way through contracts in February. And when the results of the state bar exam were released in 1950, every student in that first class had passed. By 1950, the school had outgrown the old barracks and was relocated to the basement of the newly built M.D. Anderson Library, far more luxurious with its air conditioning, good lighting, and comfortable chairs. Dean White continued to take a hands-on approach when it came to recruiting top faculty and students. By 1956, the results of his efforts were astounding. In the 5 years his students had been taking the bar exam, 100% had passed on the first sitting. Several students had scored highest in the state. The school had also assimilated one of the best law libraries in the South, with more than 23,000 volumes, a number that would eventually grow to more than 400,000. That same year, A.A. White resigned as dean to accept a position in corporate practice, and Newell Blakely was chosen to take his place. Still operating on a shoestring budget, Dean Blakely led the school aptly over a number of hurdles and initiated approval by the Association of American Law Schools, which his successor, Dean Neibe, helped secure. Through the tumultuous 60s, the school continued to break new ground. When the university became a state school in 1963, the School of Law benefited from a boost in funding, allowing the hiring of more outstanding faculty. In 1965, Associate Dean John Neibe succeeded Newell Blakely as dean. As a student, Neibe had been a member of the University of Houston's National Championship debate team. By the time Dean Neibe took office, the school and its graduates were beginning to attract national attention. Alumni like Richard Racehorse Haynes, Jack Raines, Raul Gonzalez, Ruby Kless-Sondock, John O'Quinn, and Don Riddle were beginning to make their marks. Students were stacking up impressive honors. Moot court and mock trial teams routinely won state championships, and graduates were making inroads into the city's most prestigious law firms. With a AA-LS accreditation in hand, Neibe set about to build a new facility. Conditions in the library basement had become increasingly cramped, so in 1969 the university broke ground on a new building for the School of Law. The new building would be renamed the Bates College of Law after Colonel William B. Bates, an attorney who served on both the University of Houston Board of Regents and the Law School Founding Committee.
President Johnson had enacted the HEAF, or the, it was Title I of the Higher Education Facilities Act, to give money to colleges. for buildings. Some bureaucrat had decided that law schools did not qualify for that act. So Dean Scarlett and I went to Washington and started calling on the congressmen, senators, to try to get them to help us have the law schools covered by the Higher Education Facilities Act. That didn't work. The act had already been passed and they weren't willing to reconsider it. And as it turns out, the act didn't exclude law schools, it just didn't include them. But both Dean and Scarlett and I felt that it did include law schools. So the snafu apparently was in some bureaucracy, the Office of Education, or probably. I came back and I thought, well, I'll call my friend Jack Valenti, who had gone here to the University of Houston with me, and so he was then special assistant to the president, to President Johnson. So I picked the phone up and called Jack and told him the story, and he said, then had clipped fast away, he says, I'll take care of it, Dean. The next day, literally the next day, I got a phone call from the Office of Education, and they said they would be willing to consider our application.
The seeds of change that were planted in the 1960s grew throughout the 1970s. Like most other law schools at the time, the school saw a tremendous surge in enrollment. For the first time, women, African Americans, and Hispanics became commonplace among the student body. Neibe served as dean until 1975. That year, A.A. White, who had returned to the school as a professor in 1962, once again took the reins. White was succeeded in 1976 by George Hardy, a respected legal expert in oil and gas. Dean Hardy's national recruiting efforts garnered some of the most respected legal minds from across the country and helped make the Law Center a community of nationally prominent legal scholars and a respected provider of eminently qualified attorneys.
One of the things I've been trying to work towards in my deanship has been building our sense of ourselves and our community and our pride in the University of Houston Law Center as a community. And I think George Hardy had that. He certainly had the Law Center as community in mind. He and his wife Dottie were very gracious hosts. I believe George, it was during his deanship that we started the annual auction. I think he realized that even though we were a state-supported school, the state support was not sufficient for our ambitions. So, and I think he understood that we would have to build a connection, close connection with our alumni, and have them feel a part of the school even after they've left the school as students. And you do that through a sense of community. So I think that was one of his strengths. Another of his strengths, and this has been mentioned in many of our publications, was his recruitment ability. During his 4 years as dean, we began to recruit very aggressively on a national scale, and we recruited a number of top faculty. Thankfully, most of them are still here.
By the 1980s, Houston's growing national prominence was drawing people to the city from all over the world. And the law school also is drawing a geographical mix of students and professors, as by now the reputation of the Bates College of Law was reaching far beyond the boundaries of the state.
Until I became a regent and served for a while, I did not understand how well thought of this school was among other law schools and other academics. It seems as though the reputation that I was accustomed to happened to be from folks who really didn't know what law schools were all about. But on the Board of Regents, you could see where your competition was coming from, and you could almost even tell when the tide was turning on a benchmark school, and that rather than our being benchmarked against a school, it started being benchmarked against us.
Robert Knauss, the former dean of Vanderbilt University Law School, was chosen to lead the school into the future. Dean Knauss recognized that the legal landscape was changing rapidly. Knauss was instrumental in changing the name of the school to the University of Houston Law Center to reflect its broader mission. He added more specialized areas of study to the school's curriculum. And forged stronger relationships with many of Houston's prestigious downtown law firms. And in 1983, the State Coordinating Board approved the school to grant Masters of Law degrees.
Part of this just evolved. It evolved in a variety of ways. One was recognizing the importance of continuing legal education, and bringing David Crump in and Catherine Overhaul was a marvelous stroke of genius that worked out, and now our program here is the strongest of any law school in the state.
I felt that Bob Knauss also had a sense of leadership, a vision for the school. He's the person who decided that we would become the University of Houston Law Center, that if we were going to project a strong image, both locally and also nationally, we would have to work on that image. Bob Knauss, as I also did, believed in the importance of institutes and programs and specialized areas, that we could develop certain areas of the law school in which we had particular strengths, and try to do that without sacrificing the general curriculum or the general education that our law students are receiving.
Dean Knauss took a really active role in helping me form the kind of curriculum I wanted at the University of Houston Law Center. And so we worked together, both Dean Knauss and Mickey Leland, Congressman Mickey Leland at the time, in helping ensure that I could create the kind of law school experience that would work for me.
To enrich the regular curriculum of the Law Center, the Butler and Binion Lecture Series was launched through the vision and generosity of George A. Butler. Lecturers featured so far include legal scholars, a former president, and a justice of the United States Supreme Court. The Frankel family's involvement with the Law Center began during Dean Blakely's tenure. Through this relationship, the Law Center has been the beneficiary of the Frankel Rare Books Room, and most recently, the Frankel family has endowed the Houston Law Review's annual lecture series. The Junior M. Ator Legal Improvement Award encourages improvement in the legal system and recognizes individuals who make the greatest impact in bettering society by helping to change a law or in the administration of justice. Generous donations from alumni and faculty continually help to preserve the Law Center's unique history and ensure the center's success for years to come.
I have a love for this place that is boundless. I have an appreciation for this law school that's boundless. This law school gave me my education, an education that has rewarded me very richly. I think that it is only fitting that I give back. I frankly feel like they gave me a gift. I didn't give them a gift.
My heart is so filled with an appreciation for what the law school did for me. It gave me a career and an opportunity that I could not have asked for, could not have possibly expected would turn out to be as golden as it is. Through the contacts that I made, through the many, many friends that the law school created.
I have seen so many changes since my graduation in 1986, and I'm extremely proud to be an alumni of the University of Houston Law School. One of the things that I like to talk about, even when I started practicing law in 1986, I could see that the University of Houston Law School, in terms of ranking and where it was, what people thought or didn't think about the school, but we have a lot of extremely important alumni who've been out there promoting the school and talking about a lot of the programs and some of the changes that are going on here at the law school that have really made a big difference. And so any chance that I have or any opportunity that I have to go out and promote the school, I want to do that because I think it's extremely important, not only for the alumni, but for all the students who attend here.
In 1992, founding Dean A.A. White died at the age of 85. In his later years, Dean White had commented, "My only regret is that I cannot be here 1,000 years hence to see the Law College in its ultimate glory." What he may not have realized is that the glory days would come so soon. Today, the University of Houston Law Center instructs more than 1,000 students from all walks of life. The Law Center has evolved into a major research center, helping to set governmental policy and sponsoring international programs. Few law schools have made as great a commitment to technology. The Law Center has recently completed a $450,000 computerization of its facilities, including a new computer network, multimedia study carrels, and access to the largest law library and information resource ever created. Renovations include substantial improvements to the law library. Students can now communicate with professors, review cases, search for news, scan the internet, and link with other departments at the university and with other law school classes around the country. Through 8 specialized programs and institutes, the Law Center continues to receive worldwide recognition. Today, under the leadership of Dean Stephen Zamora, the legacy of excellence forged by A.A. White 50 years ago continues.
The 50th anniversary has caused us to focus on some of the individual stories that make up our group's story. We published a 50th anniversary book that told some of those individual stories, and that you realize that a law school is really a collection of individual stories that don't end when the student leaves the law school. In Umberto Eco's novel, The Name of the Rose, he talks about the library as a conversation, and you can almost hear the books, the sort of the rumbling that goes on between the books. Think of books as ideas that are bouncing across, back and forth. The same is true of law schools.
From a drafty Army barracks to an institution recognized as one of the top 50 law schools in the country, the University of Houston Law Center celebrates 50 years and sets a precedent for the future.
I'm very proud of our graduates. We have some of the greatest lawyers that have ever practiced law.
I think it's great if anybody has the time to take to go the years that you have to do this to get this education, because I think you just benefit greatly all your life from having been through this school.
If anyone coming to the University of Houston now got 1/10 of what I got out of being here, it will be worth their spending 3 years at this institution.
To think that I sit here 30 years later with gray hair instead of dark black hair, with less hair than I had then, and I have been able to go through an institution that gave me a career opportunity with an economic ability, that graduated my oldest son from this institution and have given him an economic opportunity. And the question presented is, in closing and in looking back, what has the institution done for me? And I guess I could only summarize it in a few words by saying it's done everything for my family and my life that have allowed me to be what I am.